Hello students, this is Coach Holliday, and today we're going to look at polynomial long division. If you remember in yesterday's lesson, you learned how to divide polynomials by monomials. Today we're going to look at that again, but we're also going to look at what happens when you're dividing a polynomial by a monomial or even a trinomial. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing is we have to remember about what long division is. Polynomial long division is going to work the same way as long division that you learned in elementary school. So let's take one of those as a practice. If you'll see, I have 789 divided by 3. So I'm going to rewrite this in division form. So I'm going to go 3 into 789. Now remember, what do I multiply 3 by to get 7 or close to 7? So 3 goes into 7 2 times. 2 times 3 is 6. Now I have a remainder of 1. And then I'll bring down that next column by 8. 3 goes into 18 6 times. 3 times 6 is 18. So I'm left with 0 there. And I'll bring down that last digit, which is 9. 3 goes into 9 3 times. And that's 9, and my remainder is 0. So my answer is 263. If there was a remainder, I would put remainder, whatever that would be. Okay? Well, long division with polynomials works just like long division from elementary school. Okay? So before we do a couple examples, we want to look at what some vocabulary is. All right, so we have 4 terms of vocabulary I want to go over real quick. The first one is dividend. All right, what is the dividend? Okay, the dividend is just the polynomial to be divided. When I look back at the example that I just did, all right, the 789, that is, or what's underneath the roof, that is the dividend, okay? The second vocabulary term we're going to look at is the divisor. The divisor is the polynomial that's divided into the dividend. So again, in my last example, the divisor is the 3, all right? That 3 was our divisor, okay? The next term is quotient. The quotient is the whole polynomial answer when the dividend is divided by the divisor. So a lot of times the quotient is written in this form. This is our quotient written there, or it's written there, okay? Or we would say 789 over 3. That would be our quotient, okay? And then the last term is called the remainder. If you remember, you probably remember the remainder. What the remainder is, it's the part of the divisor that remains when the division is complete. In our last example, we didn't have a remainder, but I wrote the remainder up there, but there wasn't one this time. So the remainder would have been 0, because that's what's left at the bottom. So if there's something left at the bottom, that's what the remainder is. Okay? So that's the vocabulary from this lesson. And now let's go ahead and jump into the examples. The first example we're going to work is going to be one that was similar to what you did in the last lesson on dividing a polynomial by a monomial. So here in our first example, 18x to the 4th minus 10x to the 3rd plus 6x squared, that's our dividend, and 2x squared, that's our divisor. So let's write this in long division form. So I'm going to put my divisor on the outside, 2x squared, and on the inside will go my dividend, and that is 18x to the 4th minus 10x to the 3rd plus 6x squared. And if you remember with long division, I'm just going to take what's on the outside, or the divisor. I'm going to take this divisor, I'm going to divide it into the first term inside. I'm going to divide it into this first term inside, which is 18x to the 4th. So how many times does 2 go into 18, or what's 18 divided by 2? 18 divided by 2 is 9. And then x to the 4th divided by x to the 2nd. If you remember, when we're dividing, we subtract exponents, so I'm going to get 4 minus 2, which is 2. So I'll go x to the 2nd. Now I go 9x, I take 9x to the 2nd and multiply it back by 2x squared, and that gives me 18x to the 4th. And now what I do is I subtract that part away from the top. All right? So 18x to the fourth minus 18x to the fourth gives me 0. And now I'll bring down my next term, which is minus 10x to the third. And I start this whole process over. 2x to the second divided into 10x to the third. So 2 goes into negative 10 minus 5 times. And x to the third divided by x to the second is, remember, we subtract the exponents, x to the first or just x. And now I do the same thing. I'm going to multiply this back by this. So 2x squared times negative 5x is negative 10x to the third. And then I'm going to subtract this. We'll subtract, when I bring that inside, it ends up making this plus a positive. When I add them together, I get 0. Now I'm going to bring down my last part, my 6x squared. And remember, it was plus. 2x squared goes into 6x squared. So 2 goes into 6 3 times, and it's positive 3. X squared goes into x squared 1 time. So if I have x squared over x squared, that's just 1. Remember, those cancel out and make 1. And then when I multiply that 1 times the 3, it just gives me 3. When I multiply this back over here, 2x squared times 3 is 6x squared. I'll subtract that, and that gives me 0. So my answer to this division problem is going to be 9x to the second minus 5x plus 3. If I want to check it, all I do is multiply this quotient, our answer is called the quotient, times the divisor, and it should give me my dividend. If I multiply 2x squared times 9x squared, I do get 18x to the fourth. 2x squared times negative 5x gives me negative 10x cubed, and 2x squared times 3 is 6x squared. Okay, let's look at our second example when we are actually dividing a polynomial by a binomial. All right, on this one, so let's go ahead and write it out. I have x plus 5 on the outside, and on the inside I have 2x squared plus 7x minus 15. All right, I'm going to start out the same way. I'm going to look at the first term in the binomial on the outside, and I'm going to see how many times does it go into 2x squared. So if I write 2x squared and divide that by x, I get 2x. So if I put 2x up here, 2x times x is 2x squared, but I also have to multiply this 2x by the 5. So that gives me 10x plus 10x. All right. Now remember, I'm going to subtract this whole thing. What that means is remember I have to distribute this inside here, so it makes that a minus, and distribute it to there also, so it makes that a minus, and a plus in the answer. So these two things cancel out, and I have 7x plus a negative 10x. 7x plus negative 10x is going to be negative 3x, and then I bring down my minus 15. Bring down that over there, okay? So now let's go through the same process. How many times does x go into negative 3x? So negative 3x divided by x, the x's cancel, and I have negative 3. So if I put minus 3 here, now I'm going to multiply. Net minus 3 times x is minus 3x. Minus 3 times 5 is minus 15. And remember, I'm going to subtract that away from the first part. So I'll distribute this minus into here, into both parts. It makes that a positive and makes that a positive. When I add my columns, those cancel out, so I'm just left with 0. So there is my answer. So the answer to this division problem is 2x minus 3. Now I can check by multiplying this divisor and the answer there. So if I multiplied x plus 5 and 2x minus 3, that should give me the dividend. And if you did do that during the box, using the box method, it would give you that. Okay. All right. So that's dividing polynomials using long division. In the first assignment, you're not going to have any remainders. The remainders should all be 0. In the next lesson, we're going to look at a couple more things about polynomial long division.